Many of us have heard the phrases old money and new money, but how many people know what these labels mean? Old money and new money refer to more than just the source of a person's wealth. We often see rich people and assume they're all the same just because their net worth is in the billions, but that's not often the case. The labels old money and new money represent the two calibers of rich people that exist, and in this video we'll be looking at the difference between both. I'm sure we're all familiar with the first difference between old money and new money. Old money is typically wealth passed down from one or more generations. Simply put, people with old money have known wealth all their life because their parents or grandparents or even great-grandparents were wealthy. They belong to a special class in society, the upper class, and this wealth is often associated with a family name, not just one individual. There are many examples of families with old money, some of their wealth dating back to the 1800s and even earlier. Examples are the Vanderbilts, the Roosevelts, the Rockefellers, the Mars family, etc. These families aren't just rich, they also have high social status and a reputation to maintain. So the heirs and heiresses of these families aren't all brats like most people think. They have large shoes to fill and lots of responsibility. It's definitely a lot of work and pressure to carry on the family business, increase the family wealth, and pass it to the coming generation. People with new wealth usually come from having little to nothing, and I'm sure we can all agree that it takes a lot of hard work to build a net worth of millions or billions in one lifetime. That's also true for people with new money, but unlike old money, which is inherited, new money is self-made and therefore requires more resources to maintain. When it comes to numbers, those with new money may be on the same level as those who inherited their wealth, but in terms of social status and a few other areas, these two categories could not be any more different. Another difference between these two classes of rich people is how they spend their money. When you see someone and you can tell they're rich because they're covered from head to toe in expensive materials, that is definitely not old money. Most people with old money do not feel the need to show off their wealth consciously. Many don't even care about brand names or go out of their way to get the latest flashy designer items. Don't get me wrong, they do wear expensive clothing items, but wearing a $5,000 shirt with Gucci imprinted all over it is not something someone with old money would do. Of course, they own a couple of designer clothes and accessories, but they focus mainly on timeless and less trendy or flashy items. When they do want to show off, they do so in style, wearing bespoke clothing items. People with new money, on the other hand, are more likely to splurge. Think about it. If you grew up not being able to afford a birthday cake every year, or your school fees, or you grew up in a substandard apartment, but now you have a good job that pays millions of dollars per year, what would you do with your first few paychecks? Many people would buy things they could not afford while growing up, and that's fine. People with new money are more likely to buy designer items, wear clothes from different designers in one outfit, and buy lots of bling jewelry, and again, that's fine. However, this is a major difference between new money and rich people all their lives. Another difference between new money and old money is their lifestyle and financial choices. One thing that screams new money is when someone must mention how much they spent on something. It is almost as if they go out of their way to get the most expensive services just to have bragging rights. They tend to tip too much, buy the most expensive thing on the menu, visit the most expensive spots in town, throw expensive parties, live life like it's Vegas. Having an exuberant spending habit is okay, but these people tend to spend more than they invest, and the things they spend on are not the most practical. On the other hand, people with old money have a completely different lifestyle. When you grow up rich, you're more likely to be taught how to handle lots of money and make smart financial decisions than someone with a rags to riches story. A person born rich will most likely learn early how to invest their money and that showing off is unimportant. One fundamental lesson you'd learn from a person with old money is that everything is repairable and not every broken thing must be thrown out or replaced. In terms of lifestyle, a person who grew up in wealth is interested in fancier activities like fencing, horseback riding, golfing, sailing, and other hobbies that you would describe as old school. These hobbies are sort of inborn and natural for them, firstly because a considerable number of people in their circle share these hobbies, and secondly because they teach things like that in upper-class schools where they were groomed. Another noticeable difference between old money and new money is their attitude towards people. Of course, each individual's personality contributes to this, but so does their mentality about wealth, and we've already established that both classes of rich people view wealth differently. People with old money are generally concerned about being good ambassadors of their various well-known families. Because of this, they are usually more intentional about respect and how they treat people in general. They are more educated, more likely to make kind gestures, and just act more refined. Old money is generally considered a respectable part of society, so these people feel responsible for holding themselves up to that standard. Most people with old money have a visible disgust when surrounded by someone rude or badly behaved. On the other hand, people with new money do not feel this kind of responsibility. In fact, they rarely care what anybody thinks about them. If you see a rich person being rude to someone who works under or serves them, they're most likely self-made. A rich person has several lands and other properties in different parts of the world. However, people with old money usually live in the Northeast. They build their multi-million-dollar mansions in places like Martha's Vineyard, the Hamptons, and other fancy suburban neighborhoods. This is no surprise since some of their properties were passed down from past generations, but it can also be seen as another expression of their disinterest in showing off. Another distinct thing about houses owned by people with old money is that they are furnished with many antiques and photos. The overall vibe of their houses still screams luxury, of course, but the less tacky kind. People with old money are also big on family heirlooms, which they preserve for the next generation of family members. Self-made millionaires and billionaires often reside in rich areas on the West Coast, which are significantly more urban. You'll find them living in wealthy neighborhoods like Beverly Hills, Calabasas, Atherton, Bel Air, and the like. They often have more private residences elsewhere for relaxation and when they need a getaway, but their main residential apartments are located in flashy areas. In our world, having the right connections is extremely important, and no group of people enjoys this privilege quite like people with old money. They have a special kind of access to back doors closed off to other people, even a self-made rich person in some cases. Imagine your grandparents were the founders of Harvard University or one of the major investors in Mercedes. Just think about the kind of privilege you'd have. People with old money have deep relationships with powerful people, relationships passed down through generations. In many cases, these relationships are far more beneficial than just having money. An old money family would likely have a long list of favors at their disposal, and as a result, solving problems or getting certain benefits could be arranged just by dialing a phone number. This is one of the advantages that people with old money will always have compared to self-made millionaires. In the time it took for a new money family to make these connections, an old money family would have already called in many favors. Finally, old money and new money families have entirely different kinds of conversations. When you imagine a group of rich people having conversations, whether over lunch or at a fundraiser event, it's easy to assume that they just talk about the many things they have in common, but that's not the case. People with new money can talk about how they struggled at some point in their lives, but people with old money just cannot relate to the topic. Old money families cannot understand what it's like to be financially insecure because they've never lived that life. They could listen to the problems of a middle-class person and just shrug it off or offer impractical solutions. For example, if a person from a humble family complains about being abused or underpaid, a rich kid's solution would be to quit the job, but that's just not practical for a person who needs the money. They're also likely to invite a scholarship student to a party a week before an exam. On the other hand, a person with new money is more likely to understand the financial struggles of some people. People with old money are also more likely to get overwhelmed by the slightest inconvenience, many of which are unrelatable. If you see someone having a full-on breakdown because they cannot decide what island to go to for their next vacation, they are most likely from an old money family. Their rich people problems are just unrelatable. It is easy to think they're being brats, and maybe in such cases they are, but you can also tell by their emotions that those are genuinely their issues. People with new money are more emotionally resistant to inconveniences and are generally more aware of their financial privileges. We hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this.